Welcome to Changing Suits. We're your hosts, Bal
and Taj, discussing the latest news, views, and general life for us Western Asians.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Hi, welcome to Changing Suits. My name's Bal.
And my name's Taj.
On today's episode, we wanted to take a bit of a different slant because sometimes when we talk about a subject, we have a picture in our mind of what the guest's going to look like, what they're going to talk about. But we want to throw it a curveball, shall we say. So today we're going to be talking about period poverty. And we're going to be talking to Keeran from the Red Dot Project. Now, Keeran himself, and I said himself, which is always nice to say because I'm sure that's something that is different because women tend to talk about this subject. So we're going to talk to Keeran about what got him interested in this specific topic. So Keeran, could you give us a bit of an introduction to yourself, please?
Hello, Taj, and thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and part of your podcast. So my name is Keeran Vetrico. I'm a co-founder of a company called Native. We are a coconut flower drops innovation company. I'm here to talk about the charitable arm of our business, which is the Red Dot Project. So before going deep into Red Dot Project, do you want me to explain what period poverty is for people who don't know?
That would be perfect. That way I didn't even have to ask the question. That would have been the first question.
Yeah, usually when we say period poverty, people usually shake their head yes, but most of them don't really understand what it is because it's such a taboo subject. Nobody really talks about this. I'm glad there's some these things have been brought up in Parliament, even in our country, but in many parts of the world, it is such a taboo that people just ignore it. They ignore the issue. Hence, we thought as a business, we want to identify with women who are struggling, mainly because of period poverty. And period poverty actually refers to the lack of access to menstrual products, sanitation facilities, and adequate education. This is a widespread issue affecting around 500 million people around the world. And we believe no one should be held back because of their period. However, for many, this is not the reality. Sadly, people face economic burden, and because they can't afford the menstrual care product.
You said 500 million people are affected.
Yes.
Obviously, that I'm assuming that figures are worldwide.
Correct.
What has caused? Because I remember just a little while back there was a lot going through Parliament talking about this, focusing on this specific issue.
Yes.
What has brought it to light at the moment? What's so important about it now?
I think there's empowerment. There's more education now. People, women are empowered to talk about it, at least in this part of the world. However, we don't see that happening around the world. So at least we are happy that in the West, people are talking about it. People are bringing it up. Mainly, it's not just something that affects poor countries. It also affects, Scandinavia, the UK, the US. Some of the richest countries in the world are affected by period poverty.
That's what I wanted to find out, because when you said the UK and Western countries, how does it affect the Western countries?
Yeah, there's a huge disparity between the rich and the poor in almost every country. In the Western world, we measure progress in the term of GDP, and that is not the right measurement. So I would say the rich people have a lot of money, yet there are also a lot of poor people out there. In the UK, 1 in 10 women or girls can't afford period products or period protection. So that is a big number. Think about it, it's 10%, and around 137 girls, 137,000 children miss schools every year because of period poverty. So this is a significant statistics, and it gets worse if you look at parts of South Asia, South America, Africa. So we're just talking about the UK at the moment.
And what kind of substitute products do they use if they don't use sanitary towels, etc.?
They're very unclean ways of people doing this. They use dirty rags, newspapers. There's lots of dust and weird things in parts of the world. Not in the UK per se, but in many parts of the world. In the UK, I think it's still an issue, but they've not gone to the extreme of using such unhygiene product, which causes infection, which even causes death in some parts of the world.
It's interesting because I remember when I was in council, as a councillor, the motion actually went through council to support what government was doing in regards to making sure that we stamp out period poverty. So it is being spoken about in all, whether it's government or local government.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing here in the UK is, although people aren't using unhygiene, well, the newspapers and other things they would in other parts of the world, it is having an impact because obviously less girls are going to school if they are being affected by period, or they're not playing sports games, they're not doing this XYZ. So the opportunities that young girls are having are reduced just because of the mere fact that every month they will have a period.
Exactly.
And
That
that's a
is
really sad
exactly
thing,
what
isn't
we
it?
want to highlight as well. Yes, that people are held back. That's what we are saying, because they're not able to go out, they're not able to enjoy life like everybody else. So part of your life in a monthly period is affected, and that is caused by period. It is a very stigmatized issue, and it's a very menstruating is a expensive process. That's what we say. It's not cheap. You have to have some kind of protection, and even in countries like the UK, only now, very recently, they've removed the VAT on period protection products. So this is something that we have to think about. Why didn't it happen so far before? Why is it only happening now? More people are talking about it. There's better education. We just need to be able to spread this around across the other communities, around the world.
And why is this stigma attached to
Yeah,
periods
very, very
still?
good question. It goes back very far, historically. So it's not just it doesn't belong to a single community. It's a more universal. It's a global issue. From our research, we found out it mainly because there wasn't any protection devices or products in the past. So it was perceived as unclean or inhygiene, period. And because of that, women were they were confined to spaces. They were not allowed to go into some other places, and then it became tradition and then culture linked to religion, and religion played a big part on it, because anything that is linked to religion, it's hard to change it because people are tied to that. And I think in the Western world, it's a bit more relaxed when it comes to religious effect. In other communities, the religious effect is still very strong, so it is still a stigma, it is still a taboo.
The Red Dot Project, do you is there specific locations that you that the charity funds? Is it the
So
UK or
what
is it
we do,
abroad?
yeah, it's UK. So wherever we sell our products, we want to launch our Red Dot project. So we are working with charities in Malaysia, in Singapore, because we'll be launching our products in Malaysia, Singapore, and China next year. However, for now, it's mainly in the UK. What we do is we fight period poverty. That's what it does. So how do you fight period poverty? We provide free menstrual pads, sustainable menstrual pads, through our website. So anybody who is struggling to get or buy menstrual pads, just go online to our website. At a click of a button, we'll send them to you. And we've already sent out around more than 2,000 pads since we launched it. And we support refugees. We've handed out more than 500 pads via our website.
And what kind of, for example, do schools log on to your website and order? Do you get businesses? What kind of businesses, if you do order from you guys?
We get contacted by people from if people are conducting events, they approach us. We want to give free period products through for the events, and we do that. And we supply our beer and product to restaurants, and we also bring along the period product. So if our product is available in a restaurant, you can automatically we'll get the products, the period pads there as well. Apart from that, we are contacted by refugee centers who want help with this. However, most of the people who go to our website are individuals. We don't ask questions. We don't care who you are, how much you're making. If you click on the button, if you order it, you'll get it free of charge.
Just going back to how I introduced this podcast, we should have asked this question right at the start, but we always get straight into discussion, and then I'm like, oh, we didn't ask the question. Why did you decide, as part of your business charitable arm, to be looking at this subject? Because, like I said, most of our listeners would have been like, oh, it's a woman that's going to be talking about this, and so it's such a unique situation. What got you interested in this?
I think I've been always been aware of women issues. My mom was a feminist, so I grew up understanding these issues, looking at things from a wider perspective. And I have to thank my wife for this. My wife Vani, and she said, "Why don't we do this as a part of our charity?" And she said, "You should be the face of the charity, not me." And the reason being, she said, it is a societal problem. It's not a women's problem, and if she speaks about it, it becomes a women's problem, and I want you to talk about it because it affects everybody. It doesn't affect women; it affects a society. If women stop, having menstrual periods, we won't have a society. So that's what she said, and I think it is the right thing to do. And I think as a representative, mainly as a nation face, a person, I think it carries more weight if I talk about this than my wife.
I think that's amazing. And to be honest, when I first heard about you, I was like, "Oh my god, a man's going to talk about periods! This is amazing. We need him on." Because we speak to our brother about periods, forcibly, yes, because he's got 3 sisters. But for him, it's like, yeah, over the head. It's an everyday topic. But to talk comfortably to another man is
Yes.
amazing. We needed you to come on. We thought it was amazing.
So on that point, then, where do you think we are? We'll first start with a general society, and then we'll go into South Asian. Where do you think we are in men being aware of period poverty?
It is a very sad fact. Even women are not so much aware of periods. They don't understand the biology, how it works, and what happens. And very few men. We men don't talk about it at all. It is such a stigmatized issue in every society. Nobody talks about this, and it's very difficult for women to come out and describe the issue to another man because they don't even do it with women. So I think we are very far back, and we have to come out and talk about it. It's a simple biological process that's keep the society going, and we need to talk about it. It's a healthy thing to have a period, and we have to talk about this. So generally speaking, as a society, men completely ignore this. I would say because they say, "Oh, this is something. Let go and talk to your mates, girl mates about this, not to me." That's what's happening in every culture, every society. It's not just one.
Do you think it's because periods are seen to be dirty rather than what you said, the biological process, and that's why men don't want to talk about it? And like you said, some women don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, frankly, I don't understand why it is still perceived as unclean in the current modern world. I understand why it was felt such a way 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago. We look at the literature. Being a Tamil person, I did research on the Tamil literature. We've got such a broad range of topics in our literature, nothing about period. Probably I haven't dig deep enough, but I should. People just ignore this topic. It is something that drives a society, yet we don't talk about this. So I think as part of this, we need to be able to educate people more. And I think that's what we could do as part of the Red Dot project. So it's not just providing free period pads, but also educating people about what it is.
What do you mean educate? I know that sounds like a really simple question,
Yes.
probably a silly question, but what education do we need on this?
Yeah, exactly what we're doing now. We're educating people. This is what go out and talk to people. Basically, open up about it. Talk to your partners about it. Talk to your children about this. The more we talk about it, the more people will be asking questions. And there's so many resources available if you want to understand what's happening to a human body when they have periods and why do we have it. And I believe if people are curious enough, they can go and learn themselves. But at a very young age, I think parents should start talking to children about this, and that's where the education should begin.
How do you, because my daughter, she's at an age where she's developing and she's 10 years old. Soon she'll start talking about periods. Now, say if you've got a male in the house,
Yeah.
a husband, should I say, how do you start the conversation with them? Because, for example, I'm going to say my husband never had any sisters, and their mother never spoke about periods because she was the older generation. So I'm asking you for advice. I done it with my father and my brother. They had to listen to it because there were 4 women in the house. But how would you
They had
say
no
now?
choice.
They bought us the pads, so it was nothing to them.
Yeah.
So how would you almost start the conversation with a partner who hasn't experienced talking about periods and having sanitary towels lying around here and there? In my house, there are clean ones, obviously, but how would you discuss that?
I think if you remove the stigma, you can open up very quickly. I think the reason maybe you're asking this question because there's still a feel of a stigma, a taboo attached to it. No, we don't talk about food this way. We don't talk about TV programs. It's just a normal thing. I think we have to remove, just pluck out the stigma, throw it away, and talk about it because it is such a look. Let's go to the South Asian community. In many of these communities, there's a celebration when a girl has a first period. It is announced to the world. She's available. That's how it started. So you have a celebration in almost every community when
Can I just
someone
say
has a
that's
period.
interesting? I didn't know that actually.
Yeah,
Yeah, in
could you
many
tell us
communities
about a
it's
bit more
there.
about this?
We'll
Yeah,
discuss that. We'll discuss that in a bit as well. I
Yeah, I
hadn't
think in
realised.
ancient times, because you have to announce that your daughter is available for marriage. So when someone has a period, they have this huge celebration. And many of these people from the South Asian community, they carry this forward wherever they go. So when I visit my friends in Canada, they celebrate this event, not albeit in a smaller scale, it is still celebrated. So it started off in a positive way because it is a celebration, someone having a period. So it's automatically you can talk about this now. But over time, they just shut it off. And you find when you go to Asia, people hide it like a contraband. The period pads are something that you have to wrap in newspaper, put in a black bag, and hide it somewhere deep in the cupboard and use it once in a month. I don't know how it moved from there to there, but I think celebrate it, continue with the way you did, remove the stigma.
how
Do you
is
know?
I'm really interested about the celebrations. What happens in the celebrations? Maybe I'll
I
do it
think
for
it
my
varies
daughter.
between societies and cultures. So in
Yep.
some communities, you have this event where it's a bit like a celebration of a womanhood, they would call it, because this girl has attained a puberty. She's reached an age where she's a woman now, and you invite all your relatives. It's an event. She's treated like a queen on that particular day. So that's what the celebration is all about, saying this person has become a woman.
Do you know what? I mean, I 100% agree with the fact that it should be celebrated. But I'm just thinking it from my point of view and when I did. And perhaps it is that fact that the stigma was attached. And I don't think myself I'd be comfortable with that. Perhaps it is the stigma. But that's a really interesting way of putting it. It should be celebrated, yes. But whether I'd want the whole world to know that I'd started my period, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
tough one.
I understand why it was held in the past, but there's no reason to have it now. So you don't have to invite the whole world to celebrate someone reaching puberty. You just talk about it at home, within your family. So if you have a child who's attained puberty, talk to everybody in the family. The brothers, everybody who is involved in the household. So it is not a secret to be hidden, but everybody should know something like this has happened.
See, that would make me more comfortable.
Yes.
That one.
But you know, something is everywhere. Everyone's got their own way of doing things, and people that celebrating, good, brilliant, to be honest. And I think going back to what you were saying, there probably is that stigma attached, and that's why I'm having that issue how to discuss it with the
Yes.
husband. Whereas with my dad, my brother, there was no stigma attached. It was go and get me some sanitary towels.
So one thing you did say, how did we move from a society that had big parties and celebrated it to hiding? What did happen in between that area from what you've understood?
Yeah. Again, it's coming back to religion, I would say. So when you have your period, you're not allowed to go to the kitchen. You're not allowed to cook. It all came back to they would call it perceived as unclean, hygiene purposes. There
To be
wasn't
fair,
any.
if I had that, I'd be like, great, I might tell my husband next time I'm on my
I
period.
was just thinking that.
Sorry,
Anything
disturbed
to
you
get
there.
out cooking.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and they were controlled from going to temple. They were not allowed to sleep on their beds. In certain cultures, they were confined to a particular room in the house. So it goes to the extreme level up to that. Um, However, in almost every culture, women who have periods are not allowed in religious places, and that's what we've seen. So when we say it is a cultural thing, it is universal. It's not just a particular culture.
How would you overcome that? Because you said this earlier, when it starts hitting on religious boundaries, it's very hard to break through that boundary. And it's,
Yes.
it becomes uncomfortable even within this discussion. How much do we go down that route of talking about religion? How would you communicate your
Yeah.
feelings to that community in that case, whichever community it is?
I think most of the things we do nowadays has links to something practical in the past. For example, in my society, in Tamil people, you should not cut your fingernails at night. You should not pay somebody at night, and there's reasons for that because there wasn't a good lighting. You don't know how much you're paying somebody, or you might cut off
I
your
just learned
fingers.
that a little while ago.
And
Yeah.
Taj taught me that on a podcast, which I had never realized about the nails. So I'm learning
Yeah.
a lot. Okay.
Yeah, so everything has a reason to this. In a very similar periods, of course, you didn't have the menstrual pads, cups, or tampons at that time. So there is a reason for that. You tied to the religion, and now it's become very difficult to change. But I think if you talk to people, the practicality, why it happened, and why we have to change, and I think that's how the conversation should start, rather than fighting back against the religion. So rather than saying because your religion said this, I'm going to do opposite, that is going to be more confrontational. Rather than explaining why your religion said that, it doesn't happen anymore, let's make a change.
I like that way that you've approached that. It's very, yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
like that as well. That's
not
interesting.
attacking someone because it
Yeah.
isn't about offending someone. It's about
Yes.
explaining why it used to happen. Wow, I like that way of.
Going back to the fact that the Red Dot Project does support not only people in the UK, but you do look at abroad as well. What is the difference between? I know you touched on it earlier, but what is the difference between those countries that are really impacted by this
Yeah,
problem?
yeah. Again, in the UK, we talk about this, so there's a clear statistics we can look at. In some countries, the statistics are very diluted. We don't even know what actually is happening. Nobody, take parts in the survey. Um, Even in China, for example, I'm giving an example here. When people were quarantined in hotels, so there's a traveler, a woman who was confined to a hotel. She wasn't able to go out to buy period pads, and it was not available in a hotel. So if you go to a hotel, a 5-star or 4-star hotel, you get shaving blades, you get shaving cream, you get a bag to throw away your tampon and pads, but you don't get a pad in a hotel. And she raised this issue on Baidu, one of the Chinese Twitter-like social media networks. And people, it became such a big issue. People actually spoke about this. Why is this happening? So in many parts of the world, there is this issue. And it's even worse if you look at South Asia or Southeast Asia, where I come from. There's no conversation about this. And I think we have to talk about it. We have to stop hiding it like a contraband. I keep saying this because people do.
Yeah.
And then be more open about this. Talk to your children, talk to everybody, rather than just being very quiet and assume it'll go away. This is not going to go away. It's part of your society.
Has the problem become worse in that case? I mean, yes, we're talking about it, but is that poverty line increasing? The disparity between rich and poor increasing, and
Correct.
therefore making this
Yes.
problem even bigger?
Yes, absolutely. It's getting worse because period poverty is getting worse. However, the awareness is increasing. Especially in countries like India, there are more people talking about it. Basically because of some of the, even there's some films about some of the people who have done good things about this. So more people are talking about it. There's more awareness about this. However, because of the way, the money spreads between the disparity between the rich and the poor, the people who are in the lower part of the income suffer more. Hence, period poverty is a bigger threat now.
Do you think we're going to see more and more period poverty because of the living crisis? That so many prices are rising.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's what we fear. It's gonna get worse, and we see that more on our website as well. There's more people ordering it through a website. Maybe they became more aware of this availability on our website, but it can also say it could get worse. So I think on our website we could track this very easily over time, how bad it's getting. For example, we talk about food banks. The more food banks now compared to McDonald's out here. So those are the kind of measures we want to see how bad it's getting over time because of the living cost.
How do you think this? So in China, it was obviously raised. Yes, it's being spoken about more. Do you think governments are doing enough to help in this issue?
No,
Yes, it's
not
been
at all. Yeah,
okay.
very few actually. The issue with VAT, for example, or VAT, even recently, so recently in 2021 was the time they removed VAT on.
I was gonna, I was gonna say when
Yes,
you mentioned it earlier, I was like, that's. I'm pretty sure it might have only happened in 2020, but obviously it's
yeah,
21, and that's so
yes.
scary to hear
Yeah,
that, isn't
very
it?
recent, exactly. Think about it. In the UK, it just happened, and we can't expect that to happen so quickly in other parts of the world. And here we start talking about this what in 2017, even before that, 2011, and it's such a very slow progress. And if we see in many parts of the world, people are not even talking about this. So we can only hope things would propagate and change very quickly rather than slow.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I remember a while back there was even the positioning of in supermarkets, that was an issue that was brought up as well. What do you remember what that was about, or could you tell us what that was about?
I'm not particularly aware of that issue. I think it's more on the display where you display this
Yeah,
product,
that's
and
it. Yeah, that's
and
it.
again,
Mm.
it all comes back to the stigma, I suppose, and people looking at it like a thing that it shouldn't be out there, and hide the cigarettes, not period pads. That's what we say.
Yeah,
It's not a bad thing. Hide the alcohol, cigarettes, and that's what when people want to get those, you have to have extra proactively you can go and find it, but this one should be available off the shelf anywhere you are.
Do you think that schools are tackling this issue enough? Because I think the tough bit is we all know that sex education is mainly had at school.
Yeah,
And the question always is raised as to how do parents then have that discussion? Because it does everything ends up falling on the schools and it's not easy. I mean, especially with funding drying up as it is.
yes, yeah,
What more could schools do? And then secondly, what more can parents do to support the schools in, well, vice versa, supporting
yeah.
each other?
Like you mentioned, I think we are putting too much on the shoulders of the teachers. We shouldn't. This is something that a conversation that should start at home. Parents, father to a daughter, or mother to a daughter, and that's where the conversation should be. We shouldn't push it away for somebody else's problem. It is our problem. Hence, we have to talk about it. Schools, I think, should make period pads, tampons, cups available to children who are suffering through period poverty. I think that should happen, and they can even approach us. We should be able to supply, and if we are able to supply refugee centers, we can also supply schools which are struggling with this.
yeah, because at the moment, if a child, like if someone is on their period, they'd go to reception, they'd ask for sanitary towel, etc. But are you saying maybe it should be available in the toilets or something like that, so there's easy
Absolutely,
access?
absolutely. Yeah, it
Mm.
shouldn't be an extra
Oh,
effort to get this. It's just part of human rights, and it should be available then and there when you need
yeah.
it.
But then why isn't it happening? Because that makes logical sense. You know, if it was spoken about in 2021, the VAT came
Yeah.
off, and years ago we were talking about it in council. Why hasn't that happened?
It all comes down to cost, I believe. It is still an expensive product. It is not cheap, and there are very few. From our research, initially when we decided we want to support a cause, we thought let's fund a separate charity which does this, and we couldn't find them. There were very few, which were just focusing on specific groups of people who are struggling. Um, but we realized that many people who seem okay were also struggling because of this. And we thought if we make it available online, you don't have to go to a special food bank or special center to get it. You can just get it, online. So that's what we thought. Again, coming back to your question, it all comes down to cost and how much the schools can afford. Uh, and they probably believe it's much safer to have it in, just hand it over as and when needed, rather than making it available in their toilets.
In that case, do you think, going back to what Taj said, should it be made available in toilets because it does have a big price tag? And,
Yeah,
the way that they're currently doing it, of you have to ask, is that the right way? And now I'm just to ask the question, I'm like, actually, how embarrassing it would be because of this stigma attached to the topic, how easy it's going to be
exactly.
for a child to go there.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. It should be available in the toilets, firstly, and how you can fund this. So I think schools are struggling as they are with this, and there's so many businesses in your region who can support this. So I believe if every business take it on, it doesn't cost much. If we can do this, we are a startup and we are doing this. So it's a very small portion of your profit revenue which you can fund this. So I believe schools should be able to have access to such funding from local businesses, and the businesses should be able to approach schools and support this thing. So make it available in toilets, not something that you have to ask for when you need it.
the other thing. Obviously, our podcast does focus on the South Asian community. Now, it's very easy for us to sit here and say, "Yep, we'll talk about it in the home. We'll talk about in the home," but we all know, sitting here, in the South Asian community, most things are stigmatized and are a taboo
Yes.
subject. So it's not always that easy to talk about. What steps can we
Yes.
take? And we're all aware of what the South Asian community is like, and it can be a big barrier where we don't talk about it. What practical steps can we take, knowing what the South Asian community is like with taboo subjects, especially women's issues,
Yeah.
whether it's breast cancer, whether it's periods, whether it's menopause?
Yes.
What can we
Yes.
do in
Yeah.
the South
That is
Asian
a very
community?
difficult one, because women should open up about this, and they have to educate themselves and their children and their husbands and partners. So I believe it comes down to women ultimately, but men should also start learning about this, and it should be a casual conversation between people rather than just something that you can bring up at a specific time of the day, and then ignore it for the rest of your life. So it should be a normal thing because it happens on a monthly basis. So it happens all the time, and many people have also suffer due to menstrual pain, and many men are aware of this, but they don't talk about it. So when this happens, the men should
Can I just
support
say,
women. Yeah.
on that point, actually, they do talk about, when it is spoken about,
Mm,
it's spoken about negatively. I
yes.
mean, I'm going to hold my hands up. Even I speak about it negatively sometimes. It's like, oh, she must be on her period or something like that. It
Right.
has a very
Right.
negative connotation.
Wow.
So
Okay.
how do we then? I know that sounds really strange, and I'm going to be. It's out there, and I've heard it. I've heard it from other people as well.
Mm,
Even within workplaces, you hear things like that.
yes. Yes.
So, what kind of positive spin could you put on it? Because it's that negativity with any subject that's taboo that
Yeah.
really makes it hard for people to openly discuss this issue.
Yeah, that's
What
true.
is the
That's true. Yeah, maybe I think it all comes back to education. I'm going to say education because it's just
yeah?
knowledge. I think lack of knowledge creates the negativity. So assuming something is bad or someone is behaving such a way, oh, she's in a period, that's why she's doing this, or she's cranky because she's on a period. Those are the negative connotations because there's lack of education. What's happening to someone's body when they have a period, and also how men behave. I think when somebody speaks that way, we should take the initiative to shut them off. Saying this is not the way you talk about it. We talk about this as sexism, racism, but we still allow this. I think from our side, we should be more strict when it comes to such conversations. When you can be so strict about racism and sexism, why not about something like this? Because this is a sexist thing, when a misogyny, when we talk about period, because it only affects a particular sex. So I think it is upon ourselves to voice out our you know our feel to someone who talks like this, or confront them rather than just being quiet.
And that is an interesting point. And I found this with a lot of topics where you think, oh, this is normalized, so it's okay to say this. And
Yeah.
150%, I agree with you. Now, looking back at it, Sloan, it does add that negativity. And that's where it
Yes.
starts from, isn't it? That
It
unconscious
does.
bias
Yes.
against, you know, a community.
Yeah.
Are you finding that there's particular areas that are ordering or going onto your website more than others?
No, it's all over the UK. We would say more in England because probably there's a population is bigger in England. So it's from the north to the south, everywhere throughout the country. It's not a particular place that has more. But we also have people who order regularly as well, which is really good. And we tell them, speak to your friends or your people, anybody about this, because people who suffer in silence. So when you open up and say you are getting it from this website, they can also go and get it for themselves. So we want people to be more open about this, talk about our website, get it online.
And the sad thing is, like you said earlier, with the way things are going in the UK, with the cost of living being where it is, it's something that's going to affect a lot more people.
Absolutely, yeah.
So how do we see, when we see, we need to get more girls into sports, we need to have women in high positions. This is where it really starts from, isn't it? The period poverty is one of the biggest parts that is
Yes,
stopping the opportunity.
absolutely. And they're very basic as well when you think about it. It's a biological process that affects the life of so many women. So if we can't fix this, I don't think we can fix the rest of the stuff. This is the very basic thing that happened to so many people that we just ignore. And I think it's good to talk about everything, but don't ignore one part of it. Please talk about period poverty as well.
As we come to the end of this episode, I think you're the main things that you've said. I'm going to make you repeat them anyway, because the awareness that it's raised, even with like I said, the language that I personally use and people that I've heard use. What advice would you give to others, both on a government level, and then schools, and then parents? Could you give us some information that would help each section of society there?
Yeah, I think for a start, the removing the VAT is a good thing at a governmental level. They've done it. However, I think some of this should be subsidized as well. Many of the industries are subsidized. The meat industry is subsidized, and many people don't know this, but meat is so cheap because most of the meat are subsidized. So why don't we subsidize something that is such a necessity for many people? So at a governmental level, that is something they could do. And at a school level, again, education is there, but it all comes down to the teacher's level of knowledge. And we believe more male teachers should talk about it, should teach, rather than just a women problem. It's not a women problem. Everybody should take part in it. At a smaller micro level in a family, I think fathers should take the lead in talking about this. So when a child sees their father talking about this, the male children in the family wouldn't feel isolated. They also feel part of it as well. Rather than mom talking in secret to their daughters, it should be the father who should bring up the topic.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
I like that. I love
Men
that.
lead on this topic,
Yes.
which is why you're here, Keeran.
Absolutely, yes.
Thanks so much for your time, Keeran. I've learned a lot. I knew bits about it when we were doing this in council, but it's really opened my eyes as to, the effects of something, like you said, something so basic is having on our society, on people that we won't even know if they're being affected because people just are not discussing it. So thank you for raising that awareness.
Thank you very much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure to talk about this and create awareness of something such a thing that's been a taboo and a stigmatized issue. So glad to be able to come in and talk to you both about this today.
That's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.